Profoundly devastating is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days, America and people have been stepping up to donate money, to do all they can to help people in New Orleans and all over.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
That helps you beat this game called life. You know, they tried to scare me to not wear this hat. My own friends, but this hat, it gives me power in a way. You know, my dad and my mom separated, so I didn't have a lot of male energy in my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful, though. But there's times where, it's something about, I love Hillary. I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could catch his son. It was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero. And it takes too much ownership, but you can replace pride with love. And when I see people just even go at the president, it's like, why not try love for one person to stand up against all odds and just hug somebody the way that Alice Johnson hugged her family when she got out of jail. That one by one, we can defuse this nuclear bomb of hate that we're in as a society by thinking of everyone as our family. And how would we treat our kids? How would we treat our
I think
aunties?
That's a beautiful thought, but just in literal terms, there are families being torn apart at the border of this country. There are literally families being torn apart as a result of what this president is doing. And I think that, we cannot forget that, whether we like his personality or not, his actions are really what matter. I mean, you so famously and so powerfully said George Bush doesn't care about black people. It makes me wonder what makes you think that Donald Trump does, or any people at all. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back. And Kanye West, he's out his phone. We'll be right back.
Welcome to The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Tuesday, July the 7th, 2020. I think you've guessed what today's episode and who today's episode is about. Kanye West. Next. Welcome back. Kanye West is a myriad. Some would say genius, others would say train wreck, and still others would say a little bit of both, with other things sprinkled around. Kanye West made news last week when he announced on the 4th of July that he was going to be running for President of the United States this year, not in 4 years. This with no filing of any papers, this with many deadlines to file as an independent candidate long gone. This with not a hint of a indication that he has the required amount of signatures needed to legitimately run for the highest office in the land. Now, very little of this makes sense, and this, in my view, is clearly a publicity stunt. He has a new album coming. He has a new single that he teased, and his tweet on July the 4th, announcing his presidential run, is all about, in my view, selling records, selling his next record. And I think that's what this is all about. It's got nothing to do with him running for... He's not going to run for president. That's a bunch of nonsense. And so is Kanye West saying, quote, "When you hear about slavery for 400 years, for 400 years, that sounds like a choice," end quote. That is what Kanye West said on May the 2nd, 2018. Just over 2 years ago now, he said that. Quote, "You were there for 400 years and it's all of y'all. It's like we're mentally imprisoned," end quote. There's nothing provocative about that statement. It's ignorant. It is damaging. There's nothing provocative about the statement, "When you hear about slavery for 400 years, for 400 years, that sounds like a choice." That's ignorant. That's what that is. It's ignorant. It's hurtful. It's self-hating and denigrating. And it reveals a profound lack of understanding and connection to yourself and to your people and to your experience here in the United States and your ancestors' experiences here and your ancestors' experiences prior to being forced here. Now, some people would say that Kanye West is some kind of brilliant guy, some brilliant genius. I think he is in the train wreck category. Now, make no mistake about it. West has suffered a lot of pain. He has lost his mother. He lost his mother in 2007. He has admitted to having struggles with his mental health, including bipolar disorder. And I do think that some of his behavior is manifested in these kinds of things that he is experiencing with his mental health. I do think that there is a lot of truth to that. That's just my feeling on this. Getting on stage with Taylor Swift and upstaging her in a very rude, embarrassing, and humiliating way, which revealed a very juvenile boy, human being. Quite frankly, he behaved like he was a little boy on that stage. That's exactly how I think Kanye behaved when he interrupted Taylor Swift. Then he made this song about her, and she was maybe in the video and maybe naked or not, or she was in bed with. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I don't even know why I am expanding. Yeah, you know, I got to tell you, I actually did deliberate on whether I should even do an episode on this. I really did. Because that happened in 2009 when he got on that stage and, "I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce, you know. That was the, oh, dearie me. It was embarrassing. It was minstrelsy. And I'm saying that about a black man getting on stage and doing that to a white woman. I mean, that, quite frankly, that was the antithesis of, and some of you will remember this, Ving Rhames. Do you remember? I think it was either the American Music Award, not the American Music Awards, was it the Golden Globes? or whatever it was. It wasn't the Oscars. It was maybe it was the Golden Globes or the People's Choice Awards or something. And Ving Rhames got up there and he had won for playing Don King, Only in America. That series, that TV movie on HBO. He won for playing Don King. I seem to remember it like it was yesterday, and I don't remember which award show it was. And Don King, was a big character. He's still alive in the boxing world, famous and infamous. Only in America. That is his key catchphrase. So the movie was called Don King, Only in America. Ving Rhames played Don King, and Rhames did a good job. I watched that movie on HBO. He did a very good job. So he won the award. And when he went up there to receive the award, he gave the award to Jack Lemmon. And this has been satirized in Spike Lee's film Bamboozled. You should see it, the way way Spike Lee satirizes that moment. But he actually did that. I think there may still be a clip on YouTube somewhere. And Ving Rhames actually was crying and just, I don't know if he was crying. I don't remember that. But he was certainly overcome with this emotion. And he says, Jack, come up here on the stage and this is yours. This is for you. And he literally gave his award to Jack Lemmon. And I watched it live and I was sitting there thinking, what are you doing, man? And I think what ended up happening is that Jack Lemmon took the award and then they gave Ving Rhames another one or something. It was just weird. It was weird. So, and I think that was a total minstrel move. I'm sorry. That was all about, you now know that you're going to get a career in Hollywood for the rest of your life for doing what you did like that. And no white artist would do that. No white performer, to the best of my knowledge, even to this very day, has done that. Given their award up to a black performer. It's just not happened. Even when they've not deserved it. Macklemore didn't do it with the Grammys. Back in 2012, 13, 14, whenever it was, 15. Whenever that was with Macklemore. And everybody knew that Kendrick Lamar, by miles, was the better rapper. Best male rapper, best male rap album, whatever. Everybody knew Kendrick Lamar had absolutely swept that deal. He was so good and still is so much better. And Macklemore picked up the award, accepted the award, and then backstage, I think he texted Kendrick Lamar and said, this is yours. I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry. And I shouldn't have accepted it. But he did. It was too late. It was too late for that. And Macklemore learned a lesson in doing that. And then he really began as a white man to examine his own white privilege and do some heavy lifting for himself, an excavation of himself, and ended up becoming, quite frankly, an anti-racist. He did his song called White Privilege 2, and he went into all of these things. I thought it was a really good song, and I think he's being sincere, and I think he's become an anti-racist. And he still works with, I think, anti-racist groups and anti-racist educators out there in Seattle or up in Washington State, wherever he is. I think he's up in Washington State. That's where he's from. And, he has gained a lot of respect from me. I respect him immensely now because he turned it around and did the work, and he's continuing to do the work and becoming a real ally, somebody who has earned now his bona fides. But he made a mistake. He made a mistake and he apologized and he realized that he made a mistake. So all of that is to say that Kanye West did kind of the opposite minstrelsy, if you will, to what Ving Rhames did with Jack Lemmon. Ving Rhames gives his hard-earned award to Jack Lemmon And Kanye West gets on stage, gate crashes Taylor Swift's You cannot script this, as you can tell. I mean, I'm having trouble even getting the words out. So on the one hand, Ving Rhames gives his hard-earned award to Jack Lemmon. And on the other hand, Kanye West gate crashes Taylor Swift's moment on stage. And as she's giving her acceptance speech, and you heard it earlier, Kanye gets on the stage. I'm going to let you finish, Taylor, but it's Beyonce who should have won that award. Her album, her song was much better than anybody else's. I remember watching that live as well on TV. And I just shook my head. I thought, what the heck is he doing? I couldn't make head nor tail of it. And even that happened at a time where I was not impressed by Taylor Swift as an artist, quite frankly. But you know what's interesting? In the same way that Macklemore did some growing up, in a very real sense, Taylor Swift, you've seen how she's matured over the years, and I'm not finding fault with Taylor Swift. I'm just saying you see how she's matured now over these years and is standing up and really speaking about the world that she lives in as a, Generation Y? I guess she would be Generation Y, perhaps, I think. She was born in 1989. What is that, Generation Y? Or is that X? I don't know. I think it's Generation Y. I think that's Generation Y. Taylor Swift has been active, speaking up, speaking out, getting involved in politics, and to the extent that she endorses candidates or donates to them or spreads the word to, 85 million Twitter followers, or how many billion Twitter followers she has. She's got a lot of Twitter followers, millions upon millions of them. And she has, for the last year or two, talked very openly about the need to dismantle white racists and a white racist system. She has actively talked about it, and she has been donating money and doing things behind the scenes and has been an activist. That's something that, 11 years earlier, I wouldn't have expected from Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift is somebody who has been encouraging people to vote. She's doing all of that and has been doing it for the last few years now. And I've, again, just like Macklemore in a way, I've gained a great level of respect for her. But for Kanye West, I'm sorry, I don't have much of a level of respect for him at all. This is a guy who worships Donald Trump. This is the guy who, as you heard, wears a MAGA hat that he says makes him feel like Superman. Oh, okay. I think Kanye West has an immense amount of pain somewhere in him. And I still think he misses his mother. And I don't blame him. Look, I didn't want to turn this into a gossip session because that's not my thing. That's not my thing. I just think that the brother is a little bit lost. And I know he has 2 kids, I think 2 or 3 children now, with his wife, Kim Kardashian. But sometimes you can be very lonely, even in a family, when you have a good marriage and kids and everything, and you can be lonely still. And part of me wonders, or all of me wonders, whether Kanye isn't a lonely soul somewhere still. You're running for president? So that means you're running against Donald Trump and you're running against Joe Biden. Oh, and by the way, like I said earlier, the deadline for registering as an independent candidate in nearly all the states, a great many of the states, has already passed. And I doubt that they will make an exception for you, brother. Welcome back. Kanye West is somebody who, I don't know. I mean, I just do not know the story. It's a story that in some ways beggars belief. I'm not going to quarrel with his musical ability because obviously he is good at what he does, although I'm not necessarily impressed with his brand of rap. But he is creative. His videos are very creative and wild, and there are some of his songs that I do appreciate, but most of them I'm not really a big rap fan to begin with. But you go to the White House, and by the way, it wasn't just Kanye West in that October 2018 meeting. This is, again, 5 months after he's talking about when you hear about slavery for 400 years. 400 years? That sounds like a choice. I mean, what self-respecting black man, what self-respecting black woman says some bullshit like that? Excuse my language. I mean, I'm still pissed about that. And Will.i.am ripped into his ass too. I'm sorry for cursing, because I try not to curse when I do these episodes. Sometimes it's very difficult. But what self-respecting black person says something like that? And you're going to run for president, and you got this MAGA hat on, which is the equivalent of having a Klan hood on. I mean, is Kanye West a black Klansman now? I'm surprised he wasn't in Spike's movie. I mean, what was that about? This hat makes me feel like Superman? And I wasn't with Hillary's campaign because the slogan was "I'm with her," and as a man, I didn't feel like, what? Heck, I had problems with Hillary Clinton's slogan as well. It should have been, "She's with us," not "I'm with her." But that's a whole nother thing. I mean, Joe Biden, by the way, right now is learning that, right? He has already borrowed from Bernie. And I'm sure Bernie gave him permission because they still consult with each other these days, even now, behind the scenes. And at the end of Joe Biden's new ad, he says, this isn't about me. It's about you. It's about us. It's about all of us. And then the slogan comes on, "It's about us," which is a derivative of Bernie Sanders' "not me, us" slogan from this year's campaign that he ran. So I think Joe Biden's learning. And I think Joe Biden is learning the lesson of 2016. Do not make this thing about you. It obviously turned some people off. And then there are lots of myriad other reasons why. I'm not going to relitigate 4 years ago, but we know that there were a sizable number of black people who stayed home. There were a sizable number of black people who had their vote stolen. And there were a sizable amount of Native Americans and Latinx and Asians who had their vote stolen. And elderly, you get the idea, and young people all had their vote stolen massively in 2016. But one of the things that you heard in the Jimmy Kimmel thing that was unassailable, after he says George Bush doesn't care about black people, what the heck is he doing hugging Donald Trump in the White House, in the Oval Office? A guy that's shown you not only does he not care about black people, he's a racist. Come on, Kanye. Don't you see this? I don't think that brother's conscious. I don't think he doesn't have that kind of consciousness that certain artists have. He's no Common, for example. Like Common understands what's going on. John Legend understands what's going on. Chance the Rapper understands what's going on. Queen Latifah, she understands. And Janelle Monáe, I could go on and on. Lizzo, all of these individuals I've just mentioned, they all know what time it is. But I just don't get that from Kanye West. And it's not to say, like I've said before, that every black person is a monolith, because they're not. And you're never going to ever hear from me that all black people have to be Democrats. That's a bunch of nonsense too. You are never going to hear me say that. You can have black conservatives, you can have black progressives. There is no rule book that says that a black person shouldn't be a Republican. If a black person wants to be a Republican, that's entirely up to them. Just like if a white person wants to be a Democrat or a progressive, that's entirely up to them. Let's not start making oddities out of things that everybody can choose to be if they so want to choose to be whatever that might be politically. Because when you start to say, oh, well, what are they doing becoming Republicans, or what are they doing becoming Democrats, that becomes really restrictive and stupid. My thing is, what is Kanye West doing with Trump? That's what I'm getting at. And two things you cannot overlook here. One, Kanye West is a gazillionaire. He's a billionaire now, I'm sure. So, he can say whatever he wants, including ignorant BS. I'm not going to curse again. Ignorant BS, like when you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice, end quote. He can say ignorant crap like that. But he has to face the consequences for it too. That's what free speech is. Yeah, you may be free to open your mouth and say something, but that doesn't mean that it is a good idea. And not only that, with free speech, with free speech comes consequences. If you say something as ignorant and as confoundingly stupid and insulting as that, be prepared for the blowback. You're going to get blowback. Now, I wouldn't recommend people threatening the man's life. I think he got some of those, which he shouldn't be getting. I recommend vigorous response, though. When somebody says some BS like that, I think you'd be derelict in your duty as a black person or as a white person or as any person to let that slide without some kind of strenuous response. Because I think if he had said that to a white person, I would hope that that white person would open their mouth and let him have it. This guy is ignorant in a great many respects. He may be very good at what he does when it comes to music. Look, he gave $2 million to the families of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, according to a CNN report. So he's far from all bad news or an all bad person. He's a decent person in those respects. He recognizes that money is a big help for them. And look, he's got lots of it. But look, just because someone has lots of money doesn't mean that they are obligated to give it up. A lot of these folks don't, and a lot of them do, and you just never hear about it. And then there's some of them who don't mind getting their name in the paper or online or whatever it might be. So look, I don't want to make this a bash Kanye West festival. All I'm saying is that what I am a little askance about is this love of Donald Trump. And like I said, yes, he's a millionaire or a billionaire, is Kanye. So there is this kind of kinship, even though Donald Trump is not a real billionaire at all. He's absolutely not a real billionaire. I guarantee his taxes will show you otherwise. This guy is faking the funk on everything. And he hasn't even got any funk to fake. He's got no funk to fake. I'm talking about Trump here. But when you're tweeting out that you love Donald Trump and you keep retweeting that, and you say it twice in your tweet, I love Donald. Really? And then when Jimmy Kimmel has you on and he asks you about, well, what makes George Bush so much more racist than Donald Trump? And how can you ignore the fact that Donald Trump has separated families at the border and continues to do it? And how do you square that circle? And what makes that any better than what makes George Bush worse? What makes, why would you support someone who does these things? And he couldn't answer. And it was a good 3 or 4 seconds of silence. You heard it. I played it earlier. And then Jimmy Kimmel rescued him and said, well, here we go, take a break. Jimmy, you blew it. You blew it. You should have absolutely let him sit there and think that one out. And let that sit for at least another 10 seconds to see if he would have said anything. But I think a lot of this too is about how people in the media prop up ignorance, celebrate ignorance. This country has had a long distinguished history of celebrating ignorance, particularly in its entertainers and in some of its athletes. Charles Barkley. Don't want to name any names, though. I mean, this has happened. This has happened. This is not something that is by accident. You've got people who just were either apolitical in the sporting world after, I guess, the 1970s, with some exceptions, or who were just there to pick up their paychecks and go home. I mean, look, you had a rich history of activism in sports, especially in this country. Whether it was Jack Johnson, very symbolic activism in a way. Whether it was Jackie Robinson, whether it was Jesse Owens, symbolic as well to a degree. You had Joe Louis, you had all these people, Muhammad Ali is the one that comes to mind for me more so. I mean, Jackie Robinson, yeah, but I didn't even know Jackie Robinson was a Republican. Muhammad Ali, I don't know if he was, but I can tell you something. Muhammad Ali stood on principle. He stood on principle. And principle was his guide when you decide not to fight for your country as a conscientious objector. That's activism. He lost 3 or so plus years, or 3 years or so of his boxing career, had his belt stripped from him before he ended up winning them back later on. That's something. Arthur Ashe, Althea Gibson, I can go on and on and on and on. Colin Kaepernick more recently, LeBron James, all of these people I'm mentioning are activists or people who have really made some strong statements about it, standing up. Athletes. And then there's some white athletes too who have done the same, whether it's Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova, J.J. Watt more recently. There are people like that out there who care, who do care. humanitarians as well. I mean, but my whole thing with Kanye West is running for president. What's your platform? I get it. You do, as you and your wife have done, is this work with Trump on this prison reform stuff, which quite frankly is good to see that Ann Johnson, or whatever her name is, Annie Johnson or Ann Johnson, got released from this prison term, thanks to the work that Kardashian did with people around Trump. And that was a good thing. I'm not saying it wasn't. But what is the larger platform for that? Is it just for getting one person out? And I guess, look, getting one person out of prison who shouldn't be there is better than, nothing. And I think it's commendable. But what's the platform? When you're running for this office, what's the platform? You've got a guy in there now who's absolutely destroying it. He's privatizing prisons, which has already been done. He's doing all of these things. As I said, dividing children from their parents, stealing the kids from parents. It's like enslavement times, throwing them in cages in concentration camps. What's the platform for Kanye West? Let's say that tomorrow he is able to run, and the Federal Election Commission, which Trump has already meddled with, among other things, with all these actors acting this, acting that. Let's say that Kanye gets in to running and he decides to run. What's your platform going to be, Kanye? Where do you stand on the environment, on economics, on education, on the idea of fossil fuels and where do you stand on all these issues? What about Medicare for all? Apparently he's a supporter of that. So how could you be supporting Donald Trump? It makes no sense. If you think that Medicare for all is a good alternative, is a good thing, why are you supporting Donald Trump? I mean, this is the kind of thing that Jimmy Kimmel could have asked him as well. Jimmy let him off the hook too quick. It's just really weird stuff. But again, this is all about putting someone who is not very smart when it comes to talking about political issues up there. Now, he may be musically smart and musically brilliant, and I don't even think he's that good. And that's just me. I'm not a Kanye West fan. Can you tell? I just don't. I'm at a loss for words. What is Kanye's platform going to be? Where does he stand on... Well, I know where he stands on abortion. He is anti-abortion. He's anti-choice. That's documented. Where does he stand on the issues of food insecurity? Where does he stand on all of these other issues out here? Housing, COVID-19. I just wish that the media would really look at people who are smarter than some of the ones that we get to see all the time. I just am at a loss for words what it is about Donald Trump that he likes. And this is a concern because on that same Jimmy Kimmel show, and I didn't play it, he said, well, I wouldn't necessarily mind whether my wife, and I'm paraphrasing, whether my wife is left alone in a room with Donald Trump because Donald Trump's a player. Great. Now, if I'm sitting there and I'm Kim Kardashian, I don't know that I'm happy listening to that being said. But then that's a whole nother story. Maybe they have a shorthand or something. But this thing about Donald Trump being a so-called player is just couldn't be further from the truth. This guy's a rapist. This guy's been accused credibly of rape from at least 3 different people. An underage girl and 2 women. Now look, and that's another thing. Let me get to that. Can the media stop using that term, underaged women? Don't you see the oxymoron there somewhere? Underaged women? If anyone is underage, they are under the age of consent, which means they are below the age of 18, which means they are not adults. They are children. They are kids. No one ever says the term underaged men. Let me just get that one off my chest. Notice that I said underage girls. Kids. Let's not sugarcoat what this is. And so Trump's been credibly accused by, I'd say make it 4, at least 4 different women. Maybe it's at least 3. But the point is, it's 3 people. And once is horrible enough. I can't imagine how horrible. And you've got that in the White House. That's what's so evil. And you've got this guy here, Kanye West, backing him and talking about, oh yeah, well, yeah, he's a player. And this is something that appears in some of the rap culture. You have rappers putting Donald Trump in their records, singing about him. In 2016, let me let you on this not so little secret. 13% of black men voted for this guy. 13%. That's blooming ridiculous and shocking. I didn't even really know this until last week. And so, if you've got 13% of black men voting for Donald Trump in 2016, if you've got rappers lauding Trump and calling him a player in their records and rapping about him, and they want to be like him because he's got money, which he really doesn't, and he's got these women, and he has at least 3 who accuse him of raping them, and he's got this and that and the other, and he's got a spouse and all of this. These black men, apparently, a small group of them, who are in that kind of milieu, really like that about him. He's audacious and bold. He can get to say what he wants. Say what he wants? You mean he did something bold about being racist? And being a misogynist? And saying misogynistic and misogynoirish things? Really? I mean, I just think it's just crazy, if you ask me. I'm at a loss for words with this one. But I don't think that Kanye West is going to run. I think, again, this is a big publicity stunt. He recently announced an album is coming. I think he teased one of the singles off the album. And I think the only reason he tweeted out on July 4th, no less, that he was running for president was to help sales for his record. That's all. It's all performance art and performance stunt. He had no intent. I mean, come on. He's not filed any papers with the FEC. He's not filed any within the state deadlines for being an independent, because he obviously is not going to be a Republican candidate, and he's obviously not going to be the Democratic candidate. So that leaves him with the independent slot, unless he's going into another party. And even then, their rules are probably different. I mean, we're now less than 4 months. Would you believe it? We are under 4 months away from this general election. Already. And I just think all this stuff it's just bogus. Bogus. It's just unbelievable. What is Kanye West going to do next? I mean, what is he going to do next? I'm just sitting here shaking my head, quite frankly. Anybody who says, quote, when you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice. When you hear someone say those ignorant words, you know there's something going on deep within, and it may not all be good, but I do think it needs to be looked at, and he needs some help if he hasn't already consulted the right individuals. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.